kept within the church of Panagia Evangelistria. Andreas stared at his minister. Let's just try not to make any promises we can't keep. Minister Spiros Renatis glared back but said nothing. His carefully cultivated public image depended upon Andreas staying on as Greece's #1 cop for all things nasty, and both men knew that. And being incorruptible gave Andreas a bottom-line freedom many in government did not share. Knowledge that he could earn far more elsewhere, especially in these days of mandated deep cuts by the European Union, International Monetary Fund, and European Central Bank to every public servant's pay. That gave rise to a simple arrangement. Andreas did things his way, and Spiros took all the credit. They hadn't yet worked out who'd take the blame if someday things went terribly wrong. The helicopter came in from the west, passing over brown-green hills of wild oregano, rosemary, and sage, veined with narrow paths and ancient walls, and on into a valley on the northeastern coast peppered with cedars, olive, and fruit trees. Tinos was a largely undeveloped, narrow arrowhead-shaped island pointing northwest. At 3 times the size of New York City's Manhattan, it was the 4th largest island in the Cycladic chain and had a full-time population of fewer than 9,000. The helicopter eased in close by the edge of a burned-out field of wild summer grass. There wasn't a building in sight. As soon as the rotors stopped spinning, Spiros jumped out and hurried off toward the TV cameras. He was wearing his serious face. Andreas went in the opposite direction, toward a group of men gathered in the middle of a field around a flame-scorched van. It was the smell that hit Andreas first. Gasoline mixed with charred flesh, the sort of thing he knew he'd never forget. He tried not to focus on the odor. Revenge or death? Okay, he could see revenge as the motive for something as brutal as this, but what's the tie-in to our national motto and battle cry? And why Tinos for a public execution? The minister was right about that part. Tinos was where desperate pilgrims from all over the world came bearing prayers and offerings to the miraculous curative powers of the Megalokari, many crawling the steep half-mile up from the harbor to the church, pushing before them candles they'd vowed to light to the holy icon. A half-dozen police cars were parked unevenly across a deeply rutted, 1-lane dirt road, separating an olive grove from the field. Andreas walked toward a cop trying to keep the curious away. Who's in charge? The cop nodded in the direction of a man in plain clothes standing by the open rear doors of the van. Andreas knew him. They'd been together in the police academy. The odor grew stronger as Andreas approached the van. He struggled not to gag. The man saw Andreas coming and turned to face the van. Andreas stopped next to him and stared inside. "This tells it all, my friend," said the man. He was Tinos's police chief. Andreas had been wrong. The odor was not what he would remember for the rest of his life. It was this, an image impossible to fully grasp in the abstract, or ever forget in its unfathomable reality. 2 shapes entwined in chains. Whatever flesh he could see was charred and blackened to the bone. Neither man spoke for a moment. Andreas quietly said a prayer. "Amen," said the police chief. "I've never seen anything like this." "Me either. And I hope never to again." Andreas swallowed hard. "This is one for heavy forensics. I called in for help from Athens, but you beat them here." Andreas waved his hand in the direction of the minister. "Yeah, politics takes precedence over police work. Forensics should have been with us on that helicopter, but he didn't want to wait. They won't get here for hours." "Same old shit. No surprises there." Andreas nodded. "So what do you think?" "That we've got one hell of a problem and nothing to go on. 2 victims chained together amid remnants of a Greek flag. Don't know why the flag didn't burn." "Probably because someone didn't want it to," said Andreas. "And then there's that cylinder chained to